have the pleasure this morning or afternoon in Germany to have a very special guest with us today for all our beautiful UCLA students. And it is Dr. Markus Schaefer, who runs a studio in Germany that is connected to a network station, if I'm describing this correctly, but I'm sure Markus will do a much better job than me in describing what he does. But I did want to, and I'm very excited about this actually, I wanted to have someone from Europe and actually from my home country, Germany, yay! I wanted to have someone from Europe because in the international movie world that we're operating in here in Hollywood, obviously international buyers, especially large buyers like Germany, are extremely important for us to get any of our movies made. We're not making them without Germany. We're not making them with any of our international buyers helping us into buying them from us. So it's quite interesting to have someone from the other side of the pond and the other side of the coin, so to speak, to be here today and giving me a lovely interview. And I prepared a few questions. And the first thing I'm going to actually start with is, as we always do, you know, this is a crazy industry, and why would anyone choose to work in it? And from your background, which is actually very interesting, I read your bio, which had nothing to do with film and television. It's even more interesting. I wanted to really ask, what on earth were you thinking? Now, what inspired you to choose the path of working in the entertainment industry, Markus?
Yeah, first of all, hi, Janet, and thanks for having me. It's a great honor and pleasure having this interview with you. So very much looking forward to the next, whatever it is, 30 minutes or so. As you indicated, I have a probably slightly, let's say, left field background for our industry. As I back in the days, I earned my doctorate degree in nuclear physics, which is nothing you see that often in the entertainment industry, I guess. However, I think life is very often driven by chance, and so there were a few left and right turns in my bio, and eventually I ended up in the media industry. Actually, I was working in the field of management consulting, and a colleague of mine invested into a media company and said, well, this media company is going to be big because they will IPO. That was those days when we had the new market in Europe where you could get money on your business plan, millions for your business plan. And actually, the company went public. He hired me and said, well, you now you can bring your management consultant knowledge into the real life and work on the growth scenario in a real company. And that was really, really exciting. And I was not thinking about moving into the media industry. I was really tempted by joining a company had pockets full of cash, and was looking at a significant growth path, and that company happens to be in the media industry. But as they say, sometimes the fun comes along while working on something. And once I got into the media industry, which is now 23 years ago, I never left because I fell in love with that industry.
It's a bug. I call it the Hollywood bug. And once you've been bitten, you don't leave. It's one of those things, unfortunately, or fortunately, for those of us who do it, who come from side things, we get caught into the web, but it's a beautiful web.
Absolutely.
You know, it allows us to be, on the one hand, and you actually made a very good description, you get into the business side of things very much because it is a business, and especially with a company that you have handled that then went into the IPO and did the whole new mark thing. It's a lot of business stuff, but then also you get to work in the creative fields. You get to choose the projects, you get to work on movies, crazy actors, and all those things. So I do think the combination of the business and the creative part might also be a factor that we get sucked in.
Absolutely, you couldn't agree more. Actually, I had a bit of a soft start because I was working with an animation company, so you had no crazy actors, at least, because you've been drawing your actors and your characters. However, you're absolutely right. It's a business, it's an industry, and I think it's very important to regard it as an industry, but as a creative industry. And I think this combination of being an industry but being creative leads to the fact that you will meet a lot of very, very interesting people in this industry. And if you like routines, don't go into this industry. But if you like permanent change and permanent new challenges, you will love it.
Yes, and if you like stability, don't go into the industry either.
Yeah.
So I always tell that to all the aspiring
Yeah.
producers. I'm like, you want a paycheck every month. This is not the job you want. No.
Yeah. If you want to buy a house and if you want to have a bank loan.
Exactly. So then, Markus, what are you doing with ZDF, and what is ZDF for those of us? For those, I mean, I know, but for those of us who watch this who don't even know what ZDF is.
ZDF is Zweites Deutsches Fernsehen, which is the second public service broadcasting network which has been established in Germany. And it's the last because we only have two, but we have two. Many countries have one and some have even none. So we have two public broadcasting systems in Germany, and ZDF has been founded exactly 60 years ago in 1963. And I'm heading ZDF Studios, which formerly was known in the marketplace as ZDF Enterprises, which is the commercial arm of ZDF Studios. Of ZDF. So ZDF, that's the public service broadcast network, and we are a commercial subsidiary. Some of you and your students might have come across like organizations BBC and BBC Studios, or ITV and ITV Studios from the UK. So we are very similar to BBC and BBC Studios. We have a public service mother company, and we ourselves are a studio business, i.e. covering anything in the media value chain from creation to production to distribution / exploitation. Of course, with a strong focus on our mother company and its needs, but not only. So we are working with more or less every player in the market as well.
Okay, so basically ZDF is a network station for those who who want to understand this, and they're also, from our side as a producer, they are potential buyer for us. So they buy content and do licensing for Hollywood movies. But as you described, you are also creating content. You're creating, I believe, television. You're creating movies. You're creating TV series. You're creating scripted and non-scripted content. Is that correct?
Absolutely, plus animation.
Oh,
as
wow,
well.
yeah.
But as you said, ZDF, as any network, has a huge appetite for content, and is, well, in Germany, it's pretty regulated. So the type of content the network should broadcast is defined by the regulatory framework. So it is information, culture, entertainment, and education, a little bit like the BBC Charter, pretty similar. And so we are serving mostly the entertainment content needs for our mothership, which, as you very rightly said, is both scripted content and non-scripted content. So spanning anything from a little documentary piece to a high-end drama series. Besides that, our mothership, the ZDF, is also, of course, acquiring content from the international marketplace, including, of course, US content.
Right. Correct. So that's what I wanted to kind of focus our students on, to understand there are different areas here that you are basically dealing with, which is the production side, the distribution side, local content, and as well international content. So when you think about some of the content pieces that you have been involved in, do you remember some, for better or worse, that you can share some experience with us with?
Yeah, actually, probably one of our most recent projects, which is coming actually to the US. We are very proud of that. Yay,
wow,
CW.
That's amazing. Congrats, CW. I have to watch this.
Yeah, it will. I'm not sure if they will use the international distribution title, which is The Swarm. And I think you're from Cologne, aren't you?
Yes, I am from Cologne.
Yeah,
There's
and
I know is it based on a book?
It's based on the novel written by a fellow city mate from Cologne by Frank Schätzing. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's a great book. I'm so glad it's finally getting made. I know there were some tries, but it's finally it's got me. I'm so happy to hear that. All right,
and the interesting thing about it is the book has been published nearly 20 years ago, back in 2004, as you might remember. And for a long time, everybody, including Hollywood, had been looking at the novel, because it's an outstanding, great novel, but it was so complex and difficult to make, because there was a lot of underwater scenes with a new form of species living underwater and attacking mankind, and so a near future eco thriller, as you could call it. And back those days, it was more or less impossible to produce it without a super high budget. So Hollywood has been sniffing at it, but never really got into it. And with production techniques advancing and VFX and then SFX becoming more, let's say, affordable, ZDF took a new approach and said, okay, let's try to develop that show. Although it still needed a big budget. Actually, it was the biggest budget ZDF ever had in its history. So it was a show with a budget of 45 million euros, which is more or less $50 million these days, for an 8-episode series. Eight. Yeah. So biggest show ever made out of Germany, probably / Europe. So that was quite an experience for us. Of course, it wasn't fully financed by ZDF, and it was a great teamwork of a couple of players, which I think is kind of archetypal of the way we will all be working going forward. That we build intelligent kind of networks to get our shows made. And in this case, it all started with ZDF being the seed investor, the anchor network. And ZDF is part of a network or let's say club of European public service broadcasters. So they got their French counterpart, then Italian counterpart on board. And then we as the commercial arm helped to find additional financing in the market. So we got a Swedish VOD service Viaplay on board. We got Hulu, but not US Hulu, but Hulu Japan on board. So we had finally 6 financing partners plus a lot of soft money from various territories. So we were ready to go, had the budget in place, but then COVID hit the place. And we said, shoot, we were all set to start shooting in South Africa, and the show was spanning 8 different territories around the world. And we were trying to set the scene for all these 8 different territories in South Africa, but in COVID it was impossible. So we moved the whole production more or less overnight to Italy and created Latin America, Canada, France, Italy, and Germany, and Sweden, all in Italy, and shot this series in 2020, and finally released it earlier this year. And yes, it was the most successful ever series on the ZDF network, both on its linear service as well on its non-linear service, and it's selling well around the world, including the US. So watch out for The Swarm on CW.
Oh, I will definitely watch out for that. And I love the book. So I mean, and I like sci-fi, or eco sci-fi, if you want to call it that, anyway, as a subject matter for anything. This is fascinating. And I think it's great that you mentioned how you kind of piece it together, because that's how we have to work here too. We're all piecing, finance sources together and using money from different countries and subsidies from either European territories or the US states that offer us subsidies as well. So it's interesting to see that even with, and this is is it German language or is it English language?
A multi-language, actually.
It's a multi-language series. I can't wait to see this.
Yeah. So due to the financing partners, so we had cast from Germany, from France, from Italy, from Sweden, from Japan.
I love it.
So it has been a multi-language shoot, and it's fascinating. I saw the first rough cuts in that multi-language version, just with English subtitles, which is really, really great. And of course, we dubbed it for the German audience, as we are a dubbing market. But the fact that it has been such a kind of natural multi-language version, there was no artificial feeling to it, as the core cast is a team of scientists, and if you work in science, you know that you always have very international teams who have members from all across the world.
Right, and I think we're getting more and more used to watching shows in different languages and just seeing subtitles then in whatever language we're watching it in. I think it becomes more of a normal thing anyway. And this is the ideal show, obviously, in support of this. This is fantastic. Congratulations on this. I had no idea this is finally getting made. Wow, I can't wait. I'm a huge fan.
I said, wow. It's been a great effort, but everybody's very happy that it did so well at the end.
It is big, and I'm glad you got it sold in the US. It's not easy to sell this kind of content in the US. It's not easy for us being in the US to sell to the US. So for someone outside of the US to sell to the US, that's kudos, big kudos, because that's not easy to do.
Thank you very much. And couldn't agree more. We are very happy, and it's been a big effort to take some European content to the motherland of entertainment, to the US. Yeah,
exactly. No, you should be very proud. Very well done. All right, well, I'll watch it. I'll make sure everyone watches it. So when you talk about then the certain content that you're focusing on in your area of what you're producing for ZDF and for what looks like is more also the international marketplace, are you looking at series like these content-wise? Are you looking at series that are based on IP that can help increase the value? What is your focus on when you pick content ideas?
I wouldn't tell the truth if I would say there's just one single focus. ZDF Studios, to go back to the structure of our company, is a group of companies actually. So we are a group of more than 30 different companies covering both production and distribution. And especially on our production companies, they are covering anything from non-scripted to scripted. And as I said earlier on, of course, we are guided by the program needs of our shareholder, of the ZDF. And in drama, yes, there's a big appetite for series, as well as, and that's probably very German, as we call it, made for TV movies. So there are a lot of slots in the ZDF program schedule where you have 90-minute made for TV movies, which is probably pretty special in the international landscape. And so there's anything from, of course, whodunits. Germans love their whodunits. But also romantic comedy, but more and more also genre series. So we have just greenlit a vampire series, and we have just greenlit a mystery series, and that's basically driven by the broadcasters' need to attract more younger audiences. Of course, the younger audiences these days get attracted by all the SWOT services and social media content offerings. So the established networks all have, I think, across the world, the same challenge to also to get access to younger audiences. So if there's one common denominator for our content focus, then say focus more on content which is able to attract younger audiences for our shareholder.
Right, and that's exactly leading me to the next question about the streaming disruption. So that's how you respond to that. What did you do, or was ZDF do to respond to this streaming frenzy, as we call it?
Yeah, well, of course, you would have to ask ZDF themselves to get the most informed answer.
Of course, but in general, as you live in Germany, what are you observing is happening? Are there? Here we see all the networks are creating streaming platforms.
Yeah. So first of all, let me start from my individual perspective, from the producer distributor perspective.
Yeah.
The streaming disruption was a very positive disruption from our point of view, because all of a sudden we had competition in Germany. Before that, we had 4 buyers. We had the 2 public service broadcasting networks, and we had 2 commercial broadcasting networks. We still have them, and you've been working with one of them back in the days. So we had 4 buying groups in Germany. And then Netflix started offering its service in Germany, and soon after they also started producing local content. And then we had Amazon entering the market, then we had Disney entering the market, we had Paramount, then we had Discovery, and all the likes. So from a producer point of view, it's fantastic. Now we can go to 10 different buyers instead of 4. Isn't that great? And of course we saw that the demand for content was increasing in the German market, and the same from a distributor's point of view. So we could sell licenses to far more buyers inside Germany. Of course, we have been selling licenses to non-German buyers previously, but the market was getting bigger, which from a producer distributor point of view was, in the first instance, great news. Of course, for the established TV stations or broadcasters was not so good news, because they got competition. And as we just described, the younger audiences changed their or developed a viewing habit which is non-linear, which is online. And so, of course, the natural answer, as more or less in any territory, was that the broadcasters started developing their own VOD services. First of all, it started as catch-up services for ARD and ZDF, the public service broadcasting networks, and they are for free. Something important you need to know. While the commercial services in Germany have started VOD services, which are partly AVOD, partly SVOD, but due to the regulatory framework, the public service broadcasters networks in Germany are obliged to offer their VOD services for free. And it started all as a catch-up service, but has now become a full-blown VOD services, with more and more content being published online first. Also, the Swarm actually was first published on ZDF's VOD service before it went to the linear service.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
and that's how they want to kind of attract viewers to the VOD platforms. And I think it's important to understand that, let's say, the KPIs a network like ZDF is pursuing are very different from those a commercial service like Netflix is pursuing, because ZDF has to fulfill its kind of public mission to serve the German audience in general, in accordance with those guidelines: entertain, educate, and inform. Yeah.
Yes. But you're also bringing up the next interesting point in my questions here, because the way you are distributing and the strategies the way you're distributing, an example you just made which is unusual for Germany, and I think for us even too. We see it more here as well, where content is released first on the streaming platform and then goes into the network. Can you talk about how you see that impacting not just Germany, the audience, etc.? What do you think the reasoning behind it is? How would you describe that?
You mean the strategy going online first and linear second?
Correct.
Yeah, I think very simple, in very simple terms, it's trying to promote the online platforms and really to make it attractive to use the online service, the VOD service, as some content is available there before it's available on the linear service, and kind of trying to drag people into it, and making some form of time-limited exclusive offer to the market.
Do you see it's working? Do you see that the subscriptions that people watch it there first, is it increasing the relevancy of the platform where it starts?
Yes, we can't talk about subscriptions for the ZDF Mediathek as you're not obliged to register. It's really a low-level access. You just click it and you can watch it. Within Germany, of course, it's geo-blocked. Yeah. And so don't try it from the US, it won't work.
I tried. Trust me, it's like not happening on my screen.
Yeah. We see the Swarm is a very good example. Yeah, so it has a ratio of about 1 to 5 in terms of non-linear users versus linear users, which is very, very good.
Yeah.
Typically, you see numbers 1 to 10, 1 to 20, and even higher ratios for the linear use.
That's why I'm saying. So if we could talk about optimization of content in your territory, it's actually similar here. They do it for the same reasons. But when you say how could we optimize the distribution in the local marketplace, would you say that's one of the ways to do it for certain content?
Yes, I think, and there's a great media researcher in your territory from the East Coast, Evan Shapiro from I think he's from NYC. He always says when we talk to him, always think 360, think around your brand, and don't think of going somewhere exclusively or in a very separate way. Serve all channels and try to be as available as you can. So that means we don't see anything as or an exclusive, or it's and. So linear and VOD, and YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and fast channel and you name it. Yeah.
Right. And it all kind of works together and explodes the visibility, and that's what elevates.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, always keep in mind the special mission of a public service broadcasting network. The mission is to be as available as possible, and to bring your offerings anywhere within Germany you can, all covered by the flat license fee which every household in Germany has to pay for the service.
Mm-hmm.
Very different, as I said, from the business models commercial broadcasters are pursuing or following.
Right. So for those of us who are watching us in short terms, is when you watch ZDF in Germany, you don't actually have to pay for it. You pay a main fee that goes to the broadcast networks that are basically owned by the government. Correct? What do you call it?
To be very precise, they're kind of self-owned.
Ah, okay.
I don't want to become here too academic.
No, we're not coming in. We're just trying to describe the difference.
I think well, a little bit of history here. I think we all know that the Nazis have misused the German media and have controlled the German media to pursue their own objectives. So what the Allies did after World War II, they kind of made sure that the German media is very federal and is very disconnected to the government. So that's why I said we shouldn't say that the German public service broadcasters are owned by the government. They're not. They're owned by themselves. And they're financed by a public fee, which is also determined by an independent commission.
Ah, interesting. I see. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
So we're paying the fee every month, and that includes access to Mediathek, which is the online platforms, and access to all the connected online platforms that are connected to ZDF. So those are all free. So the way you then look at a success like the Swarm is you look at how many people are watching it and how are they watching it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the KPI for the broadcasters, ZDF. We as a producer and distributor, of course, look at the commercial impact. Of course, we look at it. Did we make a production margin? How's distribution going? What's the margin we're making on distribution? And what goes to the waterfall? So here we are very similar to any other player.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So Germany is a very important buyer. Do you want to give us kind of an idea? I mean, most people don't. We know, in Europe, in Hollywood, we're selling to buyers. We're selling to Germany. We're selling to England. We're selling to France. But Germany is really the biggest buyer for us in Hollywood. Would you want to talk about that for just a moment?
Well, yeah, of course, we are very used to, the German broadcasting service are very used to buying from the West Coast, any kind, from the big feature film to all the procedurals, all the Navy CIS, etc. You can all watch them on German television. So that's, let's say, the classic licensing business. But like with the Swarm, we are more and more are getting into co-pro deals, which include also US players. So we have just greenlit the production of we call it a cozy crime show, a procedural cozy crime show where PBS is on board as American or US player. So while we have been a, let's say, classic buyer as a market over the last 70 years, we are more and more also putting an eye on becoming a co-production partner and teaming up. Not only in the non-scripted space, where we have been doing that for many years, but also more and more also in the scripted space with, well, I should say Anglo-Saxon players, so UK and US players.
Right. So it's basically like, would you say it's like a co-production in a sense, rather than a license?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, of course, license is, to be fair, license is definitely the dominating model.
Still, yes.
But there comes more and more a co-pro element to it. And of course, we see a lot of Hollywood content being made in Europe.
Yes.
Simply because of the lower production cost, of the public subsidies. So I've just been talking earlier today to somebody who told me about Kate Winslet shooting a series in Austria, because the Austrians have a new subsidy system which works very well, and of course the Americans are very smart and are
They go
already
where
in
the money.
Austria, yeah, and get the money. Yeah.
Yeah, they go where the money is. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a new subsidy that pops up, the studio's there first. What? There's money. We got to get our hands on it. Can you talk about the Austrian subsidy for us? Do you know about it?
Actually, I don't know much about it. It's very new. It's very new. It's just been introduced a couple of months ago, actually. The interesting thing, it's a grant, and it's very easy with regard to the application procedure. And as far as we know, it is an unlimited fund. So
Nice.
that means you can apply throughout the whole year, while other funds are typically limited. And if you don't apply in January, you're out.
Yeah.
And you don't get anything. But here, they said it is an unlimited fund, and I just heard that they are kind of a little bit overwhelmed by the demand, so they might introduce a cap later on, but for the time being, it's unlimited. And from a German point, it's interesting because it's competing with the German market. In Austria, the spoken language is German as well. So it's attracting also a lot of production work from Germany. So the German government has some pressure to kind of refurbish their own subsidy models, and our Secretary of Culture promised to do so this year. So we're keeping an eye on that.
I like
and
that.
If so, we might come up with an interesting new subsidy model also in Germany in 24. So watch out for that.
Yes, I will definitely keep an eye on it. I did not know about Austria, and I'm going to check it out right after we're done here.
Yeah.
So last question for you, and I know you need to go. If you would give the students at UCLA that, some of them, so just so you know the audience that you're talking to, we have everything from someone who would enter the industry, who enters this, just does this particular course, which is film and television financing, entertainment finance course. But there are also others who are doing the 2-year UCLA producing program, which is a very prominent program in the US. It's probably one of the leading ones. And then there are people that I have in my courses that are executives with Netflix. I have one right now who works with Warner Discovery. We have people that come from the entertainment world that are already in the world and just want to expand their knowledge in regards to how does financing work, how does distribution work, because they come from different sectors. So the crowd, long story short, is mixed. Knowing that, what advice would you give them in relation to the industry today, how to operate in it, how to maneuver in it, if you had any advice for us?
Well, I think somebody said to me very early on, if you ever go to any form of social gathering in our industry, and of course we're an industry which likes social gatherings, make sure that you always leave with 5 new contacts. Don't talk that much to the people you know, make new contacts. I think our industry is very, very much contact and network driven. And of course, the Americans are much better in networking than the Europeans are. So probably I'm carrying, what do we say here, olds to Athens. That's a very German saying, probably, I guess. However, contacts. First thing. Second thing, as I tried to explain earlier, be prepared for change. In the next minute, things might be different. One of your financing partners might say, no, we are out, or we are not able to greenlight, or we have an investment stop, or whatever, or in things that are worse than that. So be flexible and always have your plan B, C, and D in place. Probably these are the things which come to my mind immediately.
And I think these are very important pointers. Flexibility is important in this industry, but I do like the make 5 contacts rule, because I've not heard that one. And I know Americans are supposed to be very good at networking, but it all depends. And I think that's actually really good advice, being flexible and making new relationships, no matter where you are at a network event or at a festival or a film market. What film markets, if any, do you go to? What are your main film markets that you attend?
We attend everything more or less, but of course in Europe, the two MIP markets, the MIP TV and the MIPCOM in Cannes in spring and fall are very important to us. From a drama point or scripted market point of view, there's an event called Series Mania in France in Lille every spring, which is becoming more and more important. We're attending LA screenings, we're attending AFM. We on our non-scripted side, we're going to Real Screen. So you can find us on any major market.
That's great. They might chase you after they watch this interview. So
please do so. Yeah. If you bump into me, tell me, hey, I know you from that interview with Jeanette.
I know people do that, so I'm just warning you. Well, Markus, I really appreciate you taking the time this morning. This was very, very
my pleasure.
Valuable information, and I'm so glad you responded positively to my cold call in reaching out to you, which could have gone differently.
Again,
really
five new contacts. Yeah, you're one of them.
I got one, which is you. Thank you very much. You have a safe flight to Frankfurt this morning, and we'll definitely stay in touch. And thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.